As a society, we've entrusted police to serve and protect the public. And while most police officers do this honorably, some people are just monsters with a badge. Antoinette Frank wanted to be a police officer even from a young age. In 1993, Antoinette worked to make her dream come true and applied for a position with the New Orleans Police Department. But there were problems right from the beginning. Antoinette was caught lying on several sections of her application and failed 2 psychiatric evaluations for the position, but the department was extremely understaffed and thought that hiring more black officers would ease racial tensions that plagued the city. So Antoinette was hired. Shortly thereafter, she entered into a relationship that would be considered taboo for a police officer. In 1994, Antoinette met a young man named Rogers Lacaze, a well-known drug dealer, after she was dispatched to handle a shooting incident in which he was a suspect. The two began seeing each other, and Rogers would go on ride-alongs, introduced as her trainee. He would sometimes even drive her cruiser. The two were said to have pulled people over and robbed them together. Apart from being a police officer, Antoinette often worked as an off-duty security guard for a local Vietnamese restaurant. She worked at the restaurant called Kim An, along with another officer and colleague named Ronald Williams. Antoinette would often go in to get food, but Antoinette's relationship with the restaurant and her fellow officer suddenly took a terrible and unexpected turn. Antoinette and Rogers had visited the restaurant twice on the night of March 4th, 1995. After they had left, the owner realized that she couldn't find the front door key and found this oddly suspicious. Antoinette and Rogers returned for a third time, this time after midnight. The owner saw them coming and quickly hid the money she had been counting in the microwave. The two unlocked the door with the key they had stolen and charged inside. Antoinette pushed past Officer Williams, who was waiting to be paid for working security that night. She shoved past a few of the employees, and while trying to figure out what was going on, Officer Williams was shot through the back of his neck and paralyzed before being executed while he lied on the floor. Most of the staff managed to hide in the walk-in cooler while Antoinette frantically searched for money. But 2 other staff, a brother and sister, were both out in the seating area still. Antoinette and Rogers found the two and demanded the restaurant's money. Unaware of where it was hidden, they begged for their lives. The two gunned them down regardless. The brother was only 17, the sister 21. Antoinette then took Rogers and raced to drop him off while she got suited up and returned to the restaurant, now in her uniform. This didn't fool the witnesses who had been hiding, and Antoinette and her accomplice boyfriend were both arrested. Both were charged with first-degree murder, and both of them were sentenced to death. They remain on death row today, Antoinette being one of 2 women on death row in Louisiana. Justin Volpe was an officer just looking for a reason to torture someone. An officer of the New York Police Department, Justin's work was cut out for him, but Justin was an angry man, and that kind of factor didn't complement his job. His rage reached an all-new level when he was dispatched to a disturbance outside of a nightclub in Brooklyn, along with several other officers in 1997. Justin and the other officers showed up to find a number of people involved in a confrontation outside of the nightclub. One of the men was Abner Louima, a Haitian immigrant who had been trying, with the assistance of a few others, to break up a fight between 2 women. Justin and the other officers tried to control the situation as it continued to get out of hand, and then Justin was struck by a sucker punch. He blamed Abner and forcefully took him down and arrested him. Abner was in for the worst experience of his life. On the ride back to the station, Justin and other officers beat Abner with fists, nightsticks, and their radios. He was put into a holding cell and strip-searched, and then thrown into the bathroom. That was only the beginning. Justin sent a full-blown kick into Abner's groin and squeezed his testicles in his hand. What Justin did next took traumatizing to a whole new level. Taking a broom handle, he brutally sodomized him with it, causing severe injury and unbelievable pain for Abner. To make matters worse, Justin pulled out the broom handle and rammed it into Abner's mouth, breaking his teeth as he did so. After tormenting this man so harshly, Justin was quite proud. He walked through the station with the blood and excrement covered broom handle and showed it off, claiming that he had taken a man down that night. Abner's injuries ended up requiring a hospital visit, where Justin and fellow officers claimed Abner had acquired his injuries through abnormal homosexual sex. The doctors didn't believe them, and Justin was eventually arrested for the torture of Abner and received 30 years in prison. Abner was hospitalized for 2 months after the incident and had to undergo 3 major surgeries to repair the damage that had been done. Justin later admitted that Abner actually never hit him to begin with. Former Detective Jon Burge is a perfect example of why torture isn't the best method for extracting accurate information. Jon became a police officer in 1970 at the age of 22. He was a war veteran and well decorated within the police service within his 20 years of being a part of the Chicago Police Department. Just 2 years after becoming an officer, Jon was promoted to detective and was in charge of investigating robberies. It was in this position that Jon's underlying hatred came to surface. Jon harbored a great distaste for criminals and those suspected of criminal activity. He wanted to see them locked up for their crimes. However, he didn't want a trial. He wanted a confession. Jon, with the help of a few other detectives under him, would beat confessions out of suspects they had apprehended. He was known to slam people in the head with a phone book, put guns to children's heads, and even shoot people's pets in order to get answers he wanted. Allegations against him claimed that he would force suspects to play Russian roulette with a loaded revolver. He'd electrocute people by a number of means, such as by hooking a torture device known as the Tucker telephone up to their face or genitals and brutally shocking them. 10 years into Jon's torturous rampage in 1982, he and his crew went a bit too far. Andrew Wilson was investigated as a suspect in the killing of 2 police officers and was horrifically tortured by Jon Burge. They electrocuted Andrew, burned him with cigarettes, and forced him against a burning hot radiator. One particularly horrible memory amongst them was when detectives stuck a plastic bag over Andrew's head in order to suffocate him. Andrew was, not surprisingly, found guilty for his crimes, but later filed a civil suit against Jon for the torture. Jon and fellow detectives involved, through a long drawn-out legal process, weren't found responsible for the torture of Andrew Wilson, but the legal system caught up with Jon as more cases came to light and launched an investigation into the Chicago Police Department's policy on how they treated suspected cop killers. Another investigation years later found that Jon was responsible for torturing over 200 suspects, leading to false confessions and innocent people going to prison. Some people were released from prison outright after years of being behind bars. Some had their sentences lessened, and Jon would find his own place in prison. Unfortunately, due to the length of time after the tortures, the statute of limitations prevented Jon from facing any prison time for the tortures. He was, however, sent to federal prison for 4.5 years for separate charges. It goes to show that evil can exist in every aspect of our lives and thrives well in environments that it should have no place. If you would like to learn more about torture methods such as the Tucker telephone I mentioned earlier, you can click on screen now to see my Seriously Strange episode on modern torture methods, or you can go down into the description below and there is a link down there for you. That's all for now. Remember, you may not believe it, but anything is possible in a world so seriously strange. I'm Rob Dyke, and I'll see you next Wednesday, so don't forget to subscribe, because you won't want to miss what's next.